Shalom Aleichem, Rabotai. The holiday of Sukkot and Shmini Atzeret are behind us, and we begin now the new year with again Parashat Bereshit. A year ago, I started this program of thoughts about the Torah exactly in the holiday of Sukkot of last year. This year, I concluded a whole year of lectures of this kind. And I hope, my friends, that at least some of you have enjoyed them, and it brought into their heart some thoughts that would definitely be decisive about the continuation of their life in the right way, the way of God, of course. So, now we begin again with Bereshit, Parashat Bereshit. Only from now on it will be with the help of God, it will be in different ways. Thoughts about certain ideas, and we'll make them as short as possible. So let us begin. Bereshit bara Elohim. In the beginning, God created et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, the heaven and the earth. Ve'haaretz hayta tohu, the world before that was a total, a complete riddle. What was that? We don't know. We cannot describe exactly what it is. The words tohu vavohu, even in Hebrew, cannot be explained in a way that we can understand. All we know that everything was completely something that cannot be described. And then God decided to create the world. So let us begin with this, with the following thought. Bereshit bara Elokim. In the beginning. Bereshit means in the beginning. But that's the English translation. Our sages said that every time it says in the Torah, Vayomer, and God said, it means that God created with the power of His words. For example, the first creation, to our understanding, Vayomer Elokim yehi or, Vahi or, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. That was the creation of the light. Now, what kind of light? That requires a deeper kind of discussion. We will not go into it. It has to do with Kabbalah. It has to do with the book of Ari Kadosh, the Etz Chaim. But one thing our sages said, that God, even though He created that light, He took it back. And He kept it for the righteous people. Why? Because the Reshaim, the people who are not righteous, will not be able to measure up to the light, to the original light that God created. So the light that we have today, whether it is electrical or the light of the sun or the light of the moon, are just another kind of creation that happened throughout the days, the 6 days of creation, in order for us to be able to survive. But the first light is total spirituality. But every time, as I said, our sages said that every time there is such a thing that God says, it is a new creation. How many of them we have in this creation? We have exactly, our sages said in Pirkei Avot, Be'asara ma'amarot nivra ha'olam. God created the world with 10 sayings. Every time, Vayomer Elokim, Vayomer Elokim. Go and watch in the first chapter of the Parashat Bereshit, and you will find out. The only problem is, when you will count them, you will find only 9. So what happened to the 10th? Where it says that 10 sayings were said. Well, the Talmud in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, I think it was page 32, It says there that the word Bereshit, which we translate in the beginning, is the first saying, which means God created something in the beginning. The question is, what was that He created in the beginning? So now we understand that which we assume to be the first creation, which is the light, no, there was something else that was created before, and that's Bereshit. What was that was created before? Let me explain the following. It is written somewhere in the books with an additional explanation by me. What apparently got created before the light, the supreme light that He created, which means the first creation in this world, was time. Before the creation that God allowed to be for this world, the concept of time did not exist. How do we define time? I mean, time, that's how we know the day, and then later on the night. We know that the day is divided in 12 hours, the night is in 12 hours. Those are hours that we call timely hours, sha'ot zmaniyot in halacha. And that's how we know the time. Now, the time is very important for the Jewish people. If there was no time, you will not be able to have any holidays, or any Shabbat, or any specific day. Time that God created allowed human beings to be able to build up their life according to all the requirements that the Torah is telling us. How would you have the holiday of Pesach on the 15th of Nisan if there was no concept of time? Same thing also with Shabbat, the seventh day. If there is no time, you wouldn't know what is the seventh day. The holiday of Sukkot, 15th of Tishrei. Rosh Hashanah, the 1st of Tishrei, the month of Tishrei. Yom Kippur, the 10th of Tishrei. All this would not be able to exist if there was no time. So God created time. That's the first creation. Now we can add here another explanation to what Rashi brings on behalf of the Midrash Tanchuma. The Midrash says, brought in the words of Rashi, Rashi is asking the question, why is it that the Torah is telling us first, the first book, there are 5 books in the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, right? Chamisha Chumshe Torah. And the first book is stories. And the first story is the story of the creation. So Rashi is coming up with a question. What is exactly the nature of the Torah? The nature of the Torah is to tell us what are our obligations. The mitzvot, the precepts, the commandments, the halacha, Jewish law. So in that case, why is it that the Torah begins with the story of creation when it should have started with which is apparently the first Jewish law, brought in Parashat Bo in the book of Shemot, the second book. What is the law? HaChodesh hazeh lachem rosh chodashim. The month, that's the month of Nisan, the Torah is telling us, HaChodesh hazeh, this month should become the head of all the months. Right? That's what it says in Parashat Bo. Well, according to Rashi, his words are from the sages in the Midrash, that's what the Torah should have started with. It should have started with the first law of the Torah, which is HaChodesh hazeh lachem. Let us see now. What is it that Rashi is bringing? He's bringing the fact that the month, HaChodesh, which means the month, is what? How do you define a month? You have to define it with the concept of time. If there is no time, there is no month. Like there is no week, there is no day, there is nothing. So Rashi brought this question because his question is not clear. Number one, why should the Torah begin with HaChodesh Hazeh? This month should become the head of all the months. That's Pesach. Nisan. I mean, in reality, there is one law that started in the Parashat of Bereshit, in the beginning. That is Peru Urbu, Peria Urviya. That's to multiply and to procreate was the first law that was given to us by the Torah. And then in Parashat Lech Lecha, you have the second law, the law of circumcision, Mila. As you could see it in the book of the Chinuch by Rabbi Aharon of Barcelona, written over 700 years ago. Also the Rambam and so forth. So why is it that Rashi brings that midrash which talks about the month, the importance of the month? HaChodesh Hazeh lachem rosh chodashim. Now we can understand. After what I said, that God created in the beginning, which we say Bereshit, God created something. What did He create? Time. Because if there is no time, there can be no creation whatsoever. Only God created the time, and then He gave it to the Jewish people. He gave it to us. Now, that's why when we recite the Kiddush of the Yom Tov, of the holidays, how do we conclude that benediction? Baruch atah Hashem, Mekadesh Yisrael v'hazemanim. Blessed be the Almighty who has sanctified the Jewish people, Israel, and the times. And that's how we know that God gave us the possibility to decide which holiday and when it starts. And the same thing, the Shabbat, of course, is an exception because it says, Baruch atah Hashem mekadesh ha-Shabbat. When we say the benediction of the Shabbat, we say, Blessed be the Almighty, the one who sanctified the Shabbat. Why? Because Shabbat is solely God's decision. That pertains to Hashem only. Does not pertain to us. But the holidays are in fact our business. It was in fact proclaimed as a holiday, this one or this one, according to the calculation of the great sages of then. But that's because of the creation of time. You have learned now that the first creation is in Bereshit is the time that God created. Because before that there was no time. The concept of time was not needed. But now that God decided to create the world, and especially the people, and especially the Jewish people, then God had to create the concept of time. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided, of course, to create Adam, the man, and then to create the woman. And one thing that is important and essential to our knowledge and understanding is to know that God created men from the dust. Of course, there's a big question here. Why did He have to create us from the dust? God is almighty. He can create anything He wants, anywhere He wants. Why did He choose dust? Well, there are several explanations to this. But the best of them is to teach us that this world is only temporary. He created him from the dust because we return to the dust. After a certain amount of years, we have to die. Of course, you should ask me the question, why is it that God created death? There should be a world without death. That would be, my friends, that would be terribly dangerous. Because you know what happens even when people live longer, like in the time of Noah, for example? They lived up to 1,000 years. What happened then? They forget about God. And they start believing that they are the power of everything. To avoid that, Hashem had to shorten our life and to make sure that we have to perish in this world so that we can go to the real world. This is not the real world. This is a certain mechanism that brings us into the way that leads to the world of God, which is eternal. That's why God had no choice but to create death. And our sages said, En mita belo chet. There is no death without sin. So Adam, the first Adam, sinned. He had one sin. God told him not to eat from that tree of knowledge. And that was the only commandment that Adam had. And don't forget, Adam was Yetzir Kapav Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the product of the hands of God, which is the most perfect creation that there is. Adam, our sages said that he was so righteous, it's unbelievable, because he was perfect. And then he sinned. How did he sin? The Torah tells us a story that apparently that there was a tree of knowledge in paradise, right? Gan Eden, and the Garden of Eden, and God told him, don't eat from that tree. And then here comes the serpent, which had a different form at that time, before the curse that fell upon him, right? And then he spoke to the woman, Chava, who was created from a piece from the flesh of men. That also teaches us another lesson. Why did God create the woman this way? Well, to teach us a law, that when one joins with a woman, they become one piece of flesh. And that's how they should feel. Husband and wife should feel like they are one single body, which means they have to understand each other, to live with each other. Otherwise, such a great blessing that God did by creating the woman could become a curse. And that ends up with divorces and terrible misery, right? So God had to create the woman as part of man. Remember, that's what the Torah says. Part of the flesh of man. Lazoti kare isha. That's why we call her Isha. Ki me'ish lukochazot. Because she was taken from an ish. Ish is a man. And that's why she is called Isha. A woman. See, everything has its own indication. All you have to do, open your eyes and brain and understand the Torah and believe in it, because every word in the Torah is fantastic. So, En mita belo chet, there is no death without sin. If Adam did not sin, there would be no death. But he did sin, which means he disobeyed the only commandment that he had. And he ate from how? Because his wife, as he himself complained, the woman that you gave me, that's what he says to God, the woman that you gave me is the one who tempted me into eating from the tree of knowledge. Now the woman also was convinced by the serpent. All this is a story. I'm not saying it's not true, chas v'shalom, God forbid. But you have to understand that this story means something extremely deep. It has nothing to do with the story itself, even though it was true. But at the same time, it means an extraordinary kind of different thoughts altogether. For example, I'll give you just one example, and with that I will conclude. How is it possible that man, Adam, the first creation from the hands of God, the most perfect creation, should sin when he had only one single commandment? We poor people, we are nothing compared to Adam. And we received 613 commandments from the Torah, plus 7 other commandments from the sages, right? And yet we succumb and we succeed. We succumb, we fall, and we get up again and again, right? Adam had only one. And the brain of Adam is not compared to our brain. It's much superior. As well as his perfection, his righteousness is unbelievable, because he is the perfect creation of God. So how come he sinned? One single commandment he could not really observe. The philosophers, the Jewish philosophers of Musar, right? They explain that the whole story of the sin of Adam must be understood in a different way. Adam understood, being perfect as he was, he could not step up further. He could not. He has reached the limit, the extremity of perfection. He cannot grow any longer. He could not stay with this kind of situation. I cannot grow. I cannot go higher. But I want to serve God in a much higher way than I have it in my nature. He said, that's not a way for me to live. I prefer to fall completely and to start again from the beginning. Even though he caused death, him and Chava, they caused death among mankind just for one reason, so that he can start again and with his own energy to climb back again to his greatness. That's exactly the message of every Jew. We come to this world with that which we call Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. Why is it that God created the evil inclination? Because the evil inclination is what makes us human beings. If we did not have a bad inclination that we have to fight every day, we would be considered like an animal. An animal doesn't have it. He has an instinct, but he doesn't have the choice, the freedom of choice that we have. So why did God create the freedom of choice? He left it in the hands of human beings to decide what to do, whether to do good or bad, because he wants to teach us that that's why you came to this world. The reason is so you will learn how to overcome. By overcoming, every day you have some kind of evil inclination, you overcome it and you succeed, you grow. And you become greater and greater and greater. That's the reason why God created the evil inclination, Yetzer Hara. That's why God created man. That's why we understand that we have obligations. You see, before the sin of Adam, that does not mean that he did not have a freedom of choice. He had freedom of choice. The only difference is that his freedom was different than ours. His freedom was, he was all good, but he knew that there is evil. But for him, he didn't have to fight evil, because he wouldn't go into evil at all. Why? Because it means nothing to him. Have, for example, the comparison as the Nefesh HaChaim. Baal Nefesh HaChaim says, Alav Shalom Rab Chaim of Volodyin, he explains that, in fact, for Adam before the sin, he knew about what's evil, but he wouldn't go into it. It's like asking someone to go into the fire. Now he has a choice, whether to go to a fire and die with the fire or not. But that's an easy choice, because nobody wants to die. Since Adam knew how terrible it is to sin, so for him it was no problem. He wouldn't sin, and that's it, even though he knew that there is such a force that we call evil. After the sin of Adam, then he became something else. Then automatically the forces of evil became integrated into the forces of good, and now it is a much difficult task to do in life. That's why it's not easy to overcome the evil inclination. Our sages said, "Lule hakadosh baruch hu mesayeo eno yachol lo." If God does not help us to overcome our evil inclination, we wouldn't be able to do that. That's why sometimes we succeed, sometimes not. If you succeed, you are a tzaddik. If you don't succeed, you are a rasha, and so forth. So now we understand more or less. Number one, what did God create before the light, the first creation? Time. Number two, why did he create men and women, of course? And number three, why is it, how do we understand that Adam, the perfect man, had to sin when he had only one commandment to keep? Now we understand. Think about it, my friends. Shabbat Shalom. All the best.